lights are out, you stumble in the dark. You kept pushing on, but then you went too far. When your ship has sailed and all your dreams are lost, everything is wrong, you feel like it's your fault. Just remember, I will be there for you, baby. Remember, there's nothing out there to get you, don't forget it. When life feels normal, just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me. You're stronger now than you ever been. You gotta leave now, it's time to catch the wind. You will climb up high and look through the clouds, and when you're feeling low, I know you'll bounce back. Oh, and just remember, I will be there for you, baby. Remember, there's nothing out there to get you, don't forget it. When life throws lemons, just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me.
It was a tale of two races, two halves really, at Iowa Speedway last week, and we come here now to the home of the former season finale for the first round of the Championship 4 here for the Maestro's ARCA Classic Series here at the Homestead-Miami Speedway. Good evening, everybody. My name is Frank Marchese. Thank you very much for making us a part of your evening here tonight. Alongside me, as always, my broadcast partner, Tony Trapasso. Tony, a big race coming up here, Championship 4. You can get some real momentum going into a difficult race at Phoenix next week.
Very much so, and it's the usual suspects at the top of the field. Coming out of qualifying, but Homestead races differently than any other mile and a half in the world, and these guys are going to have to, you know, do their best to get this track figured out quickly, to have a shot at it tonight. And from the looks of it, Dennis Weeks and Ed Morris are the only two that kind of have a handle on things. They're the only two tonight that have so far gone sub 34 seconds on a lap.
Yeah, Ed Morris, the fastest in the practice session with a 33.96. Dennis Weeks beating him in the qualifying session with a 33.99. So those two guys are going to be quick. Dennis Weeks, the winner last week at Iowa. Ed Morris, the winner the last couple of weeks before that. It's going to be a big showdown here as the Championship 4 again have been set. It's going to be Dennis Weeks leading the championship, Ed Morris, Alexander Brown, and Matthew Greathouse coming into tonight. He was the final one to get in, as we thought, coming out of that Iowa race with his third place finish. He's going to look, he's the only one in this Championship 4 that hasn't grabbed a win yet this season.
Very much so. And, Greathouse has been due. He hasn't had a stellar season per se, but he's done what he's needed to do to survive till this point. And tonight is the night he really needs to make that statement that if the rest of these guys want the championship, they need to go through him. But, he is starting fourth. Miami's kind of a wild card in this last round of the playoffs.
Yep, and he had mentioned that coming into this final round of the playoffs here after the conclusion of the race at Iowa. So the Championship 4 is set. Ed Morris with 4 wins, Alexander Brown with 3, Dennis Weeks with 3, Alexander Brown with 2. Greathouse comes in as the underdog here, which really means you're playing with house money. You can afford to be a little bit more out of control, I guess you could say, because you're the one with that really no one's looking at for this.
Yeah, but you kind of gotta drive within the limits of the car. Being as tonight they've only got 4 sets of tires to get them through the 120 laps here at Miami, and this track is notorious for eating up right front tires.
It certainly is, and it is a multi-groove racetrack. It was one of the first multi-groove racetracks to come onto the NASCAR circuit. I believe it was up until 2003. This place was a flat racetrack, pretty much the same configuration that it is now, just flat, very akin to, say, a New Hampshire. They added the banking. They added a progressive banking. Inside line, you're going to be really letting it roll through these corners. Outside line, you're going to really be able to push it. However, you're going to be pushing those tires to the limit more on the outside than you would the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing you guys have to take in mind, too, with the latest aero package that's come out, iRacing got it right, according to real-world drivers that have driven on this track as of late. There's an aero bubble around the cars now that you could feel in the real-world car, but you couldn't before in the iRacing servers. Now they can feel that, and you're able to push a little bit harder on corner exit because you've got that little bit of aero cushion of the air going around the car as well as over the top of it, and it creates a bubble per se around the car. So you're less likely to. You really have to overdrive the car to bang the wall on corner exit now.
And these corner exits are going to be very, very difficult for these drivers. Turn 1 is an easy turn in. Turn 2 with a harsh exit. It's the same thing, just flip reversed down at the other end of the racetrack. It's a harsh entry into turn 3 with a very wide sweeping exit coming out of turn 4. Creates a very loose sensation in these cars that these guys are going to be fighting all night.
Very much so. And I think Calamity Corner, from what I'm seeing of the winds, out of the southeast at 15 miles an hour. That's insane.
It is going to be a very high wind and blustery day here at the Homestead-Miami Speedway, and we'll get you up to date on all of that in the not-so-distant future. But right now, let's take a look at the grid here for tonight's race. And starting on the pole will be Dennis Weeks with that 33.990 that we had mentioned before. Ed Morris will start behind him just 2/100ths of a second off the pace. David Elliott and Matthew Greathouse will make up row number 2 with Alexander Brown and Justin Lemke in row number 3. Row 4 goes to Jeremy Knapp and Jason Brewer, with Ed Morris Sr. rounding out the 9-car field that we are going to have here tonight as the cars begin to roll off of pit road. Let's take a look at that weather that these guys are going to be facing here tonight. 84-degree ambient temperature, 104-degree track temperature, wind gusting anywhere between 15 and 20 miles an hour here tonight. There's a reason why these races are normally run at night. High track temperature, high winds that come through this Homestead-Miami area.
Absolutely is. It's not quite the furthest point south in the U.S. That, of course, belongs to the Keys. But, this is definitely the furthest point south in the continental states. So it's going to be fun to see how this one plays out. As the field works into the 3-4 complex behind Dennis Weeks in that Toyota Camry Autism Speaks number 97. This is going to be a fun one. And, Frank, I'm excited. The only thing that's really left to say is it's time to wipe the visor, adjust the 5-point safety harness, and race fans, it's showtime!
Dennis Weeks and Ed Morris come off of turn number 4, 120 laps from the Homestead-Miami Speedway. We are green as Dennis Weeks gets out to a great jump here at the beginning of this run. Oh, and sliding is the 51 of Matthew Greathouse, just barely misses collecting the 67 of Alexander Brown on the first lap.
That was definitely a Code Brown moment for most of the field, as that was a very out-of-shape 51. Don't tell me he's not trying to get to the front as quickly as he can, because he just completely overdrove the first corner.
See a little bit of left rear damage on that number 51 right in front of the wheel well on that left side. You'll see it if this camera sticks with it here. A little bit of a crinkle there. That means he did get into the right front of the 67 of Alexander Brown. So 2 of the 4 championship contenders with damage here early. Meanwhile, the other 2 battling for the lead. It's Ed Morris who's taken it over and already has a second advantage over Dennis Weeks.
This is kind of the normal working of things. Is Morris, known to be a mile-and-a-half specialist, jumps out to a pretty decent lead. David Elliott looks like he may have banged the wall coming off at turn number 4. He's a little bit squirrely down the front stretch as Dennis Weeks Jr. right now kind of laying back, just not abusing his tires, as the field pretty single-filed out right now.
Ed Morris put down the fastest lap of the race on that lap at a 34.04. Alexander Brown a 34.08. Next fastest lap would have been this 42 of David Elliott at a 34.28. So the 7 and the 67 both absolutely flying, as Ed Morris back now under the 33 second into the 33 second bracket with a 33.97. That 7 is on the move.
Well, Morris is making the statement right now that we've seen him make all season long, that if anybody wants the championship, they got to go through that prime time number 7 to get it. as he's just really picking them up and laying them down on those fresh tires at the start of the race. Still flirting with the 33-second bracket as he goes 34.02. So 3 laps in the 34.0 or better range. As this is insane.
Guys starting to get some heat in their tires now, starting to gain a little bit of confidence in these machines. Championship runners right now running first, second, fifth, and eighth. There is the 51 of Matthew Greathouse. So we'll take a look at what happened to Greathouse. This is at the start of the race. He's the second car on the outside line. Gets a clean getaway here on the start. But as we talked about, slick racetrack, a very loose racetrack. Greathouse just a little too anxious going into turn 1, slides, and the other was definitely contact between the 51 and 67.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for the 67 as he was looking to make a statement here tonight. We heard him say at Iowa that he really likes this track, and it kind of falls into his wheelhouse. Unfortunately, though, got into just a door banger with the 51, and that's kind of hampering Alex Brown right now.
Saw on the replay there, that was a pretty hefty contact there between the 67 and the 51. As these guys really still fighting these cars, almost opposite lock for the 67 headed through turns 3 and 4.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are pushing hard right now to make sure that they can hang with that 7 of Ed Morris Jr. Right now, the battle, though, is for second place between Dennis Weeks and David Elliott, as Elliott's giving Weeks all he can handle right now. As, let's face it, Weeks is in a primetime motorsports sandwich.
Yep, absolutely is Weeks. Also at a championship spot here. David Elliott is not, so Elliott going for the race win here tonight. It's not to say Weeks isn't, but Weeks does have something to think about instead of just throwing it outside, as Elliott does. Throws it to the outside of that number 97. Can't quite get the run to get onto the back straightaway, and boy, did he have to really check up to keep from running over the 97.
Another coat of paint, and both those guys would have been in trouble as they got real close to that turn 2 exit wall.
Big slide out of the 42.
I was going to say a little dirt track action for the 42 of Elliott. But, that's something Elliott's doing to help his teammate, is he's making Weeks drive harder than he really wants to right now. With Elliott pushing Weeks can't really hang back right now and save his tires. He's got to push in order to maintain and have any shot at Morris tonight.
And on the board of riding on the back of Jeremy Knapp's number 20 machine. Looking back at Justin Lemke. These two battling just inside the top 5. 5th position for Knapp, 6th for Lemke. And you can see even further back there, that's Jason Brewer and Matthew Greathouse. Brewer on the outside, Greathouse trying to gain some positions back here on the inside line, and he will look to do just that heading into turn number 3. He has the position. Can he hold it coming off of 4 is going to be the question. Yes, he can.
Yeah, and there's your answer right there, as Brewer battles back on Greathouse. That's the closest that Greathouse has been. He was a 2.5 seconds back, now reeling as he gets by Brewer. Greathouse was a 2.5 seconds back at one point, as he's steadily climbing through this thing. Only about 2.5 seconds to the rears of the 35 of Lemke. New paint scheme on that car tonight, I noticed.
Yep, on Justin Lemke, a little bit of red and white instead of the neon green and orange we're used to seeing on that number 34. So we'll go back up towards the battle here for the second position. Dennis Weeks, David Elliott, these two still in lockstep. Dennis Weeks running in the second position, as he has been since lap number 2 of this race. First two drivers are the only two that have led laps here tonight. And Weeks right now starting to curb the bleeding. Ed Morris had gotten out to a big lead early, but ever since these tires now started to fall off, that lead has been stabilizing for that number 6, for the number 7.
Yeah, absolutely. Is Weeks and Elliott both turning lap times very similar to the race leader. As a matter of fact, they're a few of the only drivers right now that are still in the low 30 or the mid 34 second range. Everybody else deep into the 34s or in the 35s already. So, and the fact that Elliott and Weeks are steadily chipping away at that lead that Morris had, I'm wondering if Morris just went way too hard, way too soon. Clinching the bonus point for, if there's a bonus point for fastest lap of the race.
Oh, fastest lap? I don't think so.
Yeah. As we're working lap 16 of 120, and that gap steadily gaining, Weeks reeling in Morris and starting to pull a gap on Elliott. So starting to get that one figured out. Apparently that Toyota Camry, it held true to the game plan, didn't push overly hard at the beginning, but he is steadily reeling in Morris right now.
Now this series has quite a streak that it has grown out. We had 140 laps at Iowa last week that ran caution-free. We have 120 laps here that have started off thus far caution-free. And to be perfectly honest, I cannot remember a caution coming out at Michigan, nor, the Charlotte Roval, obviously with no cautions. It's been a good 3 or 4 races now since we've seen a caution out of this series.
I think you're right. I think it was the first round of the playoffs was the last time we actually did see one.
Yep, the Charlotte Oval, which I was not able to attend.
Yeah, I believe that was the last time we saw the yellow flag fly. As that, I'm watching that gap between Morris and Weeks. It was north of 2 seconds just a handful of laps ago. Now, just a second and a half and dropping.
Yeah, Weeks is starting to slowly creep back in towards the race lead. We'll see what it was this time by. Weeks was a full 10th quicker last time. This time it's going to be about a half a tenth.
That the math majors, you can get your hate mail coming now. That's Frank Marchese, ESPN Towers, Los Angeles, California, P.O. Box OU812.
He certainly is starting to creep in. Look at the numbers, and if he's not creeping into Ed Morris's lead, he's certainly creeping away from David Elliott, who has fallen back to about a 1.2 second gap off of the back end of that number 97. So the 42 pushing hard to stay up. Morris losing a good 0.3 of a second coming out of turn number 4, has Weeks now just outside of a second away from the back end of that number 7.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not that he's going faster than everyone else. It's just his lap times haven't fallen off like everyone else's.
As Morris starting to really wiggle and come up off of turn 4 a little bit higher than what Dennis Weeks is managing right now. That time the lap time stayed rather symmetrical.
As the battle for 4th hot and heavy right now between Knapp and Brown. Knapp has really closed the gap in that number 20 Ford Mustang, as he is working on the lone Canadian, and shouldn't be too much longer before he's able to really battle for a pass here.
Gotta wonder how much of that is the 60 set. Boy, big wiggle there out of Alexander Brown. You got to wonder how much of this is caused by that right front damage that was sustained before we even completed a lap here after he and Greenhouse got together.
It's not just right front damage. That whole right side of that car is pancaked.
So it's certainly not helping that number 67 of Brown. And Knapp, we saw him battling with Justin Lemke about 10 laps ago, and it's completely gone the other way now.
Yeah, very much so. As I think that Weeks and Knapp are using the same strategy. They're not using the short run speed. They're kind of trying to save their tires as best they can, rolling the corners, and having that fall off not happen quite as extreme as those around them. As Weeks just gained almost 2 full tenths that last lap, and Knapp was almost spot on with Brown.
You got to remember the pit strategy here that these guys are going to be coming over from last week. Only one pit stop in the 140 lap race for all but one driver, and that one driver would have been the number 7 of Ed Morris. He was the only guy to come in twice at Iowa. That, and couple that with a speeding penalty after the second pit stop, certainly did not help that number 7. Expecting a 2-stop race here tonight, it's got to play the strategy right. And as we mentioned, we've gone 3 races without a caution here. You cannot afford to push this car on the short run, otherwise you're going to find yourself way behind.
Well, the other issue too is when these guys come in for their green flag stops, they're not pitting off of 4. They're pitting in off of 3 and using the access road. There's a lot of dust and debris on those access roads, both in and out of the pits. It's just it just happens. And the issue that they're going to have to worry about is hot tires on debris means that your tires are now studded snow tires, essentially. And anybody that's tried to run those in the spring knows just how bad it gets as the battle for the lead hot and heavy right now.
Dennis Weeks has caught up to Ed Morris right on the back of him, as close as he's been. As boy, look at Ed push right up the racetrack in turns 3 and 4, coming off the corner in the middle. But Dennis Weeks has, without a doubt, saved the tires the way he's needed to. He's going to have a fairly easy time, I would assume, getting around Ed Morris, and he has done.
2 full tenths that last time across the stripe give the advantage to the 97 of Weeks, as it's junior on junior battling right now. Morris was right on his back bumper coming off of 2. Let's see what happens off of 4, as it looks like Weeks has a much better drive off of 4 than does Morris.
It's also helpful, when you are the race leader, you're the one setting the pace. When you're the one sitting behind, you can temper yourself. You can drive a little bit slower and know what you need to do and know how much you're saving your tires. When you're out in the lead, you don't have that reference point of knowing how much you're saving. You certainly can tell when you jump out to about 1.5 seconds in 3 laps, though.
Yeah, very much so. As right now, Dennis Weeks steadily walking away from Ed Morris. It's going to be interesting to see which one of the 2 blinks first to bring their car down pit road to get some fresh shoes put on, as Morris just completely burned his stuff up way too soon, as that was about 1.5 tenths that last time by, as Weeks definitely not having the same fall off as anyone else. But as a matter of fact, the fastest lap last time by belonged to your race leader, Dennis Weeks.
And it goes to show, we had spoken at the beginning of the broadcast during the intro that it was a tale of 2 halves last week at Iowa. Alexander Brown led the entirety of the first half, got the bonus points for most laps led, came into pit. Dennis Weeks then was able to jump him in the pit cycle, and we never saw him again. Dennis Weeks, we know, is so good at saving these tires, and he has just gotten a big advantage. Again, with this is not a one-race championship. It's a two-race championship for the title.
Yeah, very much so. And, the biggest thing is you want to come out of Miami with as many points as you can muster, because let's face it, we've seen enough racing at the newest layout of Phoenix to know that it's very treacherous.
But it's going to be a big one coming up next week as we see Jeremy Knapp putting a pass on one of our championship contending drivers. That would be the number 67 of Alexander Brown. Brown getting the run coming off of turn 2. Not able to make as good a run going down the back straightaway and into turn 3. He's going to look to cross the number 20 over. Knapp has the position, but only for the moment.
Absolutely. As Knapp and Brown drag race into turn number 1. Mustang on Mustang crime right now, as that's the Canadian Canadian Brown on the inside, able to wrestle that number 4 spot back off of Knapp, as looks like Matt Greathouse behind him has caught Justin Lemke.
That's a big one as well for the championship. So we've got one championship contender moving backwards, another one with damage starting to move back forward, as that's Matthew Greathouse jumping back up into the 6th position. Remember, he had started 4th, slid coming through turn 1 on the initial start, found himself way at the back, and is now starting to work his way just outside of the top 5. He's got 1.8 seconds to go before he gets to the back of that number 20 of Jeremy Knapp. Is field getting really spread out here, little battles here and there, but I would have to assume we're coming up to the 1/3 mark of this race. Pit stops are going to be coming relatively soon.
That would be the safe bet. I dare say sometime between lap 35 and 40, we're going to see those green flag pit stops happen. And as we mentioned, both of those access roads to and from pit lane, they're going to be very treacherous, because you're going to want to drive harder than you can, because it's a flat section. It's down on the apron. It's completely flat. So you can't take the corner as hard as you could if you were up on the racing surface.
Now, we do have series that we broadcast that have mandates where you need to take the access road or you don't have to under green. We're not sure what the scenario is, and that's our bad there. We should have asked prior to the start of the race what the mandate would be for that. So there is a chance that there is a mandate. Some guys might take it because that's just what they're used to, but the fastest way would be to just come off the track in turn 4. However, with that grass where it is a hard pit road entry, which is why the access road is there.
Very much so, and it looked like Greathouse may have caught the wall coming off of 2 the last time by. Little bit of dirt track action for the 51 off of 4. That's going to let Lemke kind of claw back into that lead that Greathouse has gotten over him. But you're talking a 10-second gap from Greathouse to Weeks. So just under half a lap. And that's the kind of pace that Weeks is setting right now.
The right side of that machine looks okay. The left side is from the damage at the beginning of the race. Alexander Brown now starting to pull back out ahead of Jeremy Knapp. So it appears as though Brown has said, you know what, saving time is done, time to go. That started to get a little bit too close with the 20, and he's now starting to put some lead back on the 20 and starting to pull in some lead from the 42 of David Elliott.
Yeah, absolutely. As looks like something just happened to Brown going into 3, as Knapp was able to claw back a ton of time on corner entry. And it looks like Brown's starting to skate around a little bit more than he was early on. So definitely starting to push the issue here for the 67. Catches a little bit of the apron, has to correct there in the middle of 1 and 2. And that's going to allow Knapp to pull alongside, look to the inside going into 3. but Brown able to cover him off, running that good arc that you like to see. That whole parabolic deal coming through 3 and 4, but Knapp not giving up.
And we saw that 67 a little bit earlier on. The more keen-eyed viewer would have noticed he's been flirting with that apron for quite some time, and he's caught it on a couple of occasions, and it has worked out well enough for him at the moment, but he can't rely on that being a thing.
Well, hopefully he doesn't, because that's, sometimes it's the car starting to push. If maybe you've pushed that right front a little too hard, you can dip a tire onto that apron to help start the car rotating, but you've got to be real mindful of how far you dip onto that apron, because it's very easy to, go a little too much over the edge and it snaps you by.
I think Ed Morris Sr. might have just gone over the edge, as Jason Brewer was able to get past him just now. We'll try to take a look and see what happened with Ed. Yep, had a snap of oversteer coming out of turn 4. Had to catch it, took him all the way down to the inside wall on the front straightaway before he was able to catch that. And Ed Morris Sr., that was a battle for the 8th position between those two. And I think, yep, here comes that 14 of Ed Morris. So he was probably trying to come down pit road the lap prior and missed, and had to come back out and do another lap.
Yeah, that's kind of what that looked like. So I guess that answers the question we were asking, is do they have to use the access road getting onto pit road? So far, the answer is no.
No, the answer to that would be definitely optional, as Dennis Weeks taking the option to stay out a little bit longer. Now, Ed Morris Sr. looks as though he's going to cut this race into thirds, which is exactly what we are going to do. Working lap number 42, Dennis Weeks is back in control of this race and starting to pull a big lead. Almost 2.5 seconds on Ed Morris, who's actually coming into pit road right now. So Morris will cut this race into thirds as well. And he will be the only other driver to come in on this lap. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. You're watching the Maestro's Classic ARCA Series right here on ESPN.
Changing the face of the world doesn't happen overnight. It takes a strong group like no other, each containing unique characteristics, ones that inspire change and progress. To be a maestro is to lead, to inspire, and to create, helping shape both communities and industries. Changing the face of the world doesn't happen alone. It happens with strong leaders, ones that defy all odds. The first generation of barber maestros helped create the movement. The second will define it.
Back here at the Homestead-Miami Speedway, Matthew Greathouse coming into pit road. Pit cycle has been darn near completed, and we figure, well, if Fox can go to break during all the action, we can too. As Alexander Brown currently leading, he will come down pit road now and possibly surrender that lead. No, he will not. At least not to Jeremy Knapp, as he's actually around in pit road is that 67.
Man, you're going to get us in trouble. You know that? Normally I'm the one that you got to keep the reins on, but holy cow.
Fox slam.
All right, then. All I can ask is please don't sue us.
We didn't take anything. It was a constructive criticism is what we did. Well, what I did.
What, do you got a mouse in your pocket now? I didn't say anything. So, that was not the kid in the wheelchair from New York.
Another constructive criticism that Ed Morris has given to Dennis Weeks is that I'm not a fan of you being in the lead as often as you are. And Ed Morris now has retaken the race lead out of this pit cycle. He's got 1.2 seconds on that number 97 of Dennis Weeks, and those two are absolutely flying.
Absolutely. The only two to go sub 34 tonight, as during the break, Morris went 33.9 dead. Dennis Weeks, shortly after his pit stop was over, went 33.95. And the last time by, just about 4/100 separating the two.
So these two are good on new tires. It's certainly Dennis Weeks who has the advantage on old tires, and we still have a lot coming up here in this race. We're 10 laps short of halfway. We also have a lot coming up here on ESPN. Rick Motec was the only show in town last week. That is not the case this week, as the All-American Racing League will make it to Charlotte Motor Speedway tomorrow night. That will be a 7 p.m. Eastern time. It's an 8 p.m. Eastern time start actually for them. My apologies. We'll just fix that right now. Then the Rick Motec Truck Series an hour later. They will hold their penultimate race of the season. That will be from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And then the Western States Racing League will return from a week off. They will be at Iowa at 10:05 p.m. Eastern time. And then on Wednesday night, it'll be the Ghost Cup Series. They will also be coming from the Charlotte Motor Speedway. That race will begin at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So a lot happening here on ESPN. 3 races tonight, 3 races tomorrow, 1 the next couple of days, and then a busy weekend ahead here on ESPN.
Actually, the way I understand it, we're going to be doing another round of the Way She Goes Racing League on Wednesday night as well.
Oh, there you go.
So, triple header tonight, triple header tomorrow night, double header on Wednesday night.
And then Tony and I will be the only show in town for the Milwaukee Mile at the TNT Truck Series, which if you remember how that race ended last season,
you're not going to want to miss.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to want to miss this one.
Oh, absolutely. Sparks were flying at the end of that race, literally, and not in the good way.
Nope, but it led to a 1-race ban for one driver as well, as Ed Morris coming up to lap. Ed Morris Sr. in the 14. Jason Brewer, the only driver 1 lap down at the moment in the 34, pardon me. There he is, getting lapped now by the 3rd place driver, David Elliott. Ed Morris Sr., a good 10 seconds up the road from him. And Senior, the first driver to come into pit on this pit cycle on lap 40, and a little bit of contact between the 7 and 14.
That was definitely miscommunication between Junior and Senior going into 1. That could have ended all sorts of poorly. Luckily, both cars able to maintain straight. But that line that Senior's running right now, it's a little bit odd down the straightaways. He's exiting high and then cutting back to the middle for some reason.
A lot of that would happen. See Dennis Weeks getting way down low. Now that would normally happen around this racetrack, especially because of the car getting loose coming out of the corner, so it kind of forces you into the middle of the racetrack. And with how broad that exit of turn 4 is and how loose your car gets off of that exit, it certainly wants you to run that middle. It kind of fakes you into running that middle.
Yeah, absolutely. It did cost Dennis Weeks a little bit of time to get around Ed Morris Sr. as he starts to chip away again at that lead that Ed Morris Jr. in the 7 has on him.
Those of you wondering where the championship competitors are running, that would be 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 6th. Now that might not be anything new, at least compared from the first run. 4th place and 6th place, however, have changed positions. Matthew Greathouse has jumped into the 4th spot. Alexander Brown right now running in 6th. That would have to do with Brown staying out the longest on his set of tires, running to lap 47, compared to Greathouse, who came in a lap earlier, and compared to the top 3, who came in on laps 42 and 43, respectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, tire fall off being around 2.5 seconds from fresh tires to where we saw those green flag pit stops happening in the early 40s to mid 40s. You know, the undercut is just so huge here tonight that you almost want to be the first one on pit road.
Almost. Certainly gets you that advantage, and you had made the point as we were going into break that Dennis Weeks needed to come in to cover off Ed Morris, and even with that 2.5 lead that Weeks had built up before the pit stops, Morris still came out ahead of him, and that was just one lap sooner.
Yeah, absolutely is. You know, Weeks continues to chip away at that lead that Morris has. You got to wonder, is Weeks running the car a little bit harder on the fresher tires this time by than he did in that first one, as now Morris starts to pull a little bit of a gap on Weeks.
The lead never got out to more than about 1.5 seconds between these two during the first run, and it's still sitting at about 1.25 seconds now, and Weeks was able to flip that halfway through the run into 1.5 seconds lead for himself. So I wouldn't be all that concerned with as if I were the 97 as to whether or not I'd be able to catch Ed, even though Ed very well could make adjustments to be able to make those tires last longer. That 97 is still in a very good spot as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're still early on in this run, and it wasn't until lap 25, almost lap 30, before Weeks was able to really get by Morris. Right now, he's a lot closer than he was early on in the event. Plus, he doesn't have the pressure from behind from David Elliott that he has, so he's able to save a little bit more tire. It's kind of showing up right now, as that was 0.5 tenth there that he was able to dig into the lead. And then, you know, now, just in a handful of laps since we last mentioned it, it's down to just barely over 1 second.
Halfway through this race here tonight, working lap now 62 of 120. This would be the closest battle on the racetrack between first and second, and it's just over 1 second. Dennis Weeks has 6.5 seconds on David Elliott, who currently sits in the 3rd position. Elliott with 8.5 seconds on the 51 of Matthew Greathouse. Greathouse with 3.5 seconds on Justin Lemke. Lemke with 2.5 over Alexander Brown. Brown with 5.5 over Jeremy Knapp, and it's about to grow with that wiggle that Knapp just had. Then Knapp with 13 seconds on Ed Morris Sr., who has another 10 seconds on Jason Brewer. So everyone pretty well spread out here at the moment.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the closest battle right now is between Morris and Weeks, 2 of our championship 4 This is the first round of the Maestro's Classic ARCA Series championship contenders, championship 4 round. 2 races tonight at Homestead. Next week we're at Phoenix, and after Phoenix we are definitely going to have, without a doubt, a final champion. So everybody right now looking to gain as many points as they possibly can. So far, Morris, Weeks, and Brown have been the only leaders we have seen tonight.
And Brown getting his laps led during the pit cycle. Ed Morris and Dennis Weeks, the only two that have actually been able to fight for the race lead here tonight. Morris right now would get the bonus point for most laps led at the moment. However, it wouldn't really matter all that much if Dennis Weeks were to get the race victory. Now for the sister series here, the Rick Motec Truck Series, this would be the only week that these two of the last 3 rounds of the season are breaking off. The Truck Series will be at Indianapolis next week after both series were at Iowa last week. Here at Homestead for ARCA, trucks will be at Indy this week, and then next week they will both reconvene at Phoenix for their championship race. So it's gonna be, and for Ed Morris and David Elliott, really, for that matter, both those guys not running for the championship over in the other series, a real chance to get some practice in to try to make life as difficult as possible for the championship 4 on Tuesday nights.
Very much so. I do want to take a quick moment to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. If you haven't done so already, hit that thumbs up button. It really helps with the YouTube and Facebook algorithms to help share this with the masses. It'll show up in the news feeds quicker. That was a big move for Morris.
Morris with a big wiggle there out of that number 7, and now that's closed that lead down to a half a second. And also, if you're taking a look and subscribing as well, you'll also notice a little bit of a change to the YouTube profile. Esports Broadcasting Network, SRM LLC. So congratulations to our parent company, Sim Racing Media, for officially claiming that LLC, and just means a lot more good things to come here on the Esports Broadcasting Network.
Very much so, and I've got to thank everybody that has subscribed in the recent weeks, as we have quickly climbed past 2,100 subscribers and fast approaching 22.
What was it, about 2 weeks ago that we were at 2,000, and we're already almost at 2,200, and the growth, and we've both been, I mean, you've been here from the start, and I've been here for now almost 2 years. The growth that we've seen over these last couple of months has been substantial as compared to what it was in recent years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we brought on many more talented producers and commentators to help grow the catalog.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were struggling before to do 2 broadcasts a night. Now, we're doing triple and sometimes quadruple headers. On Sunday nights, we do 4 races in the same day.
It's been quite a ride here in at least the month and a half, 2 months that I've been back, and it's been quite a head turn from the way it was during the summer to where it is now. As another man who's going to be turning ahead right now is going to be Ed Morris, turning his head up to the rearview mirror to take a look at the number 97, who is now right on the back bumper, looking for the race lead yet again.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what we've seen quite a bit this season is Weeks knows how to save his tires. Morris has always shown that short run speed, and there's some tracks where it plays into his favor, some tracks where it kind of doesn't. It looks like tonight it's one of those kind of doesn't, especially if we stay green like we hope we do. Even money is right now on Weeks, because we are fast approaching where they should be entering the money stop sometime here in the next 10 laps, I would assume. And that's going to leave a real short dash to the finish, about 40 laps.
Take a look at the 7 drivers and where they came into pit. And again, right before the third mark of the run, here comes Dennis Weeks looking for the race lead on that number 7 of Ed Morris, just as he was doing in the previous third. And if he does this again in the final stint, this will be for the race win here, as right around now we would be at 7 to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Weeks has shown time and time again, he knows how to save that right front tire. As you can hear him just rolling that corner, not really pushing it too hard on corner exit, as he was a full 10th to the good that last time by. And right now, within striking distance of Ed Morris, as now they flip-flopped there. It was about half a tenth to the good for Morris that time.
See how much these two are wiggling right now, heading through these corners, and Weeks getting down to about $1.30 in the middle of this. 136.54, around 135, headed through the corner, and you can tell he's not on. He is not full throttle for all that long here before he's going to get off again.
And I dare say that right now Weeks is really in a lot of dirty air. You can see that he's gotten to the backside of Morris, but he hasn't been able to get that run that we saw him get earlier to try to grab that lead, as he had to wait on the car to actually initiate the turn that time. So a lot of dirty air right now for the second place runner.
It wouldn't surprise me at all, and if Dennis and Ed are listening to this, I don't want to give an "aw shucks, you just ruined it for me" moment. Could Weeks possibly be laying behind that 7 to get into pit road first without giving the other one the chance to counter the move? Or can Weeks just not get past the 7 right now?
I think it's part from column A, mostly column B, though. That was a real pucker moment for the 97, as he just pushed right out to the wall there. He's going to have to stop the hemorrhaging real quick here.
Now, I know I could have explained that a lot better, so allow me to do that now for those of you watching.
I followed what you were saying.
Well, no, I know you did. Dennis Weeks, if he stays behind Ed Morris, he can jump into pit road first, and Ed won't be able to do anything about it because he'll already be past pit road by the time Weeks starts to make the dive down. If he goes in front of Morris, then Morris can do that to him, and we saw how damaging it was for Weeks when Ed stayed out, when Ed came in the lap before on the last set of pit stops. So it's a little bit of cat and mouse. Sure, the 97 probably could get around the 7 at the moment, but does he want to is the question.
Well, I think we're going to find out here within the next couple of laps. But I dare say that you kind of hit the nail on the head there, as if you take a look at the tire fall-off that these guys are experiencing right now, we're right around a second and a half from their fastest lap to now.
Great audio here of Ed Morris and how much he's having to play with the throttle through these corners. And again, he's a little bit better off than Dennis Weeks is, because Weeks doesn't have to deal with the dirty air coming off of the car in front of him the way Weeks does. And it looks like, boy, Morris went down low coming out of that corner. Almost thought he was coming into pit, as we're just about a third of the way to go. We're working on 41 laps to go right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I dare say it's going to be Weeks who's going to blink first. But the other advantage that Weeks has is if Morris dives to pit, Weeks can cover him off immediately by going down pit road at the exact same time.
Yep, and it goes to the point of, do you want to get around him? At the moment is Weeks now.
Weeks is in.
Yep, there he goes. Just don't speed.
Boy.
So now Weeks has a chance to do unto Morris what Morris did unto him. This has to be a big in-lap for the 7. And he really doesn't have a choice. He's got to pit now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got to cover that off as Greathouse and Brown both stay out with him. And here comes the 7 now.
Yep, here he comes. Dennis Weeks, drop down on the left, please. Thank you very much. Off and away he goes. Ed Morris into pit road from the race lead. Matthew Greathouse coming in as well. He comes in from second, with David Elliott pitting on the same lap. Now, as you had mentioned, the access road going in, you do have to take the access road coming out. iRacing will not allow you or will give you an unsafe pit exit if you do not take the access road out.
And they've done that to kind of help stop the LePage effect, which if anybody has seen that footage from Talladega, about 15 years ago, Kevin LePage decided to come out of pit road and immediately just merge right up into the racing line as the entirety of the field was bearing down on him. Battle for the lead. That's Weeks and Morris side by side down the backstretch.
Undercut works for the 97. Dennis Weeks takes the race lead away from the number 7, and now Morris will have to chase down on fresh tires. It'll be the first time he's had to do this all race. The final championship contender, Alexander Brown, coming down pit road. Greathouse down and away. Justin Lemke now in the race lead in the number 35.
And Lemke does get the bonus point for leading a lap, as right now the effective race lead is currently the battle for third between Weeks in the 97 and Morris in the 7. This is going to be one of the first times all night that Morris has really had to deal with the dirty air.
It's a huge drift there from the 97 of Dennis Weeks. Now battle for second here between these two. It's effective race lead, as Tony mentioned. Ed Morris just put down the fastest lap of the race at a 33.90. Never mind, give that to David Elliott at a 33.85. Wow. Fastest lap we've seen tonight, period.
Absolutely, just digging deep on that one.
Justin Lemke down pit road. So this will turn from the battle to the effective race lead to a battle for the race lead. Here on lap 85.
As Jason Brewer decides to put it on the hauler.
So Jason Brewer done here for the evening. That's Jeremy Knapp in the 20 coming out of pit road.
Elliott just went sub 34 again.
Elliott really pushing that number 42. Now Elliott's about 8 seconds off of this group, so he could certainly use a little bit of help. One driver has yet to pit, and that would be the 14 of Ed Morris. Morris just losing out on the 4th position to Matthew Greathouse. So Morris, who was the first one to come in to pit the last time around, he's now the last one to pit this time.
Interesting pit strategy out of the 14, but I kind of understand what Elliott's doing right now. Is he's trying to steal as many points as he can to help his teammate Ed Morris Jr. in this championship battle, as he has Greathouse behind him, he has Brown behind him, and Ed Morris Sr. doing what he can to try to hold up Brown, who's behind him, and that's what teammates are for.
Greathouse about 6.5 seconds behind David Elliott in that the 4th position. As we are coming down and coming closer to 30 laps to go, and now that we've proven that we're better than Fox by not going to commercial during the action. We
You're gonna
waited
get us in
until
trouble,
it
man.
happened and we could process what's going on. We're going to take our second break of the night. We'll be right back. You're watching here the second to last race, the penultimate round of the Maestro's Classic ARCA Series here from Homestead.
We're going to get sued.
You saw it there on ESPN side by side. For the first time since Charlotte, we are under caution here in the Maestro's Classic ARCA Series. And wouldn't you know it, it's the two leaders. This is right after Ed Morris retook the race lead. A wiggle out of the 7. The 97 pushes him around.
Yeah,
And the
he
97
definitely has some
noses
help
the
starting
inside
that.
wall.
I'm kind of perplexed as to why Weeks went around, but unless he just panicked and had too much rear brake bias dialed in.
There's that little bit of contact, and Weeks just does kiss that inside wall. And as we had mentioned, for the first time since the race at the Charlotte Oval a month ago, we are under a yellow flag condition, and naturally, everybody's down pit road.
Not a real shocker here, as we should see everybody taking their final set of tires here. The question is, how long is Dennis Weeks going to be held in his box for mandatory repairs?
Well, that was light enough. I wouldn't assume any mandatory repairs. I would definitely say optional. And you can't even physically tell. We're looking at the car right now. You really can't tell any damage. Looking at that left front corner on that 97, he hit that wall about as light as you possibly could. And Morris, with those two being out in front by as much as they were, Morris really not affected or hurt all that much by it. However, Weeks will be the last one to roll off a pit road.
Looks like about 10 seconds of repairs needed to be done on that 97 as the team took the baseball bat to the wheel openings on the left side to make sure that there's going to be no tire rub on that 97. Now, here's the bad news. He's going to be restarting in 8th, and Morris has fresh tires.
Everyone
Dennis Weeks is going to have to do yeoman's work to get this one done.
Absolutely, and he'll only have about 25 laps to do it, as this is a huge break for Matthew Greathouse, who never really got a chance to compete here tonight after spinning on lap 1 and falling to the back, having to catch up pretty much from there on out. And Alexander Brown, who has led a couple laps here tonight, but by pitting so late of the first stint, it put him way back in the 6th position. He'll be up in 4th now. Both of these championship rivals will have a chance to get out and get more points than what they thought they would have had previously.
You know, that's the good news, bad news kind of deal of this. Your championship contender is currently sitting 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 7th.
Been 7th because Ed Morris, Sr., in the 14 has decided to come into pit. So it'll be Morris, Elliott, Greathouse, Brown, Knapp, Lemke, Weeks, Morris Sr. The 8 remaining drivers on track. Jason Brewer, the only driver not to finish this race. Take a quick look at it again from overhead, and it was a wiggle coming out of turn 2 for the 7 that got the 97 right up on his back bumper, really slowed him up. 97 just kind of ups and jacks him around. You can see how light that contact was on the inside wall for Weeks, but still enough to send them both around.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate there. And it kind of goes back to the way that this car is set up. They scanned the short track package on this car, so the front and rear bumpers don't line up on the speedways.
Apologies for that flashing up on screen there. As we are going to have 25 laps to go.
Oh.
When we go back to green flag racing.
And Dennis Weeks was just given an EOL penalty.
Well, he was already at the end of the line anyway, so it really doesn't matter. He would have been starting on the outside of the 4th row. Instead, he'll be starting behind that number 14. As we will have 20 laps to go, pardon me. 25, oh my goodness, numbers. 25 laps to go, back under green flag racing. As Morris jumps out big time over the 42 of David Elliott.
And the scene out of Days of Thunder, I'm dropping the hammer.
Oh, and now Brown! Brown
grief.
gets loose coming through 1 and 2. Did the same exact thing Greathouse did on the initial start, and now Brown finds himself at the back.
Unreal.
Oofa.
Cold tires strike again here at Homestead-Miami. Cold tires on a 95-degree track temperature surface. Very greasy out there. Winds gusting to 20 miles an hour. Holy cow.
Let's take a look at the charge back up through the field for the 97 of Dennis Weeks. Weeks up into the 5th position. Going to try to get 4th here away from Jeremy Knapp, but I think the highest he's going to be looking for is 2nd at the moment, because Morris has now gotten out to a little bit of a gap, not necessarily over David Elliott, but certainly over Matthew Greathouse. It's a big whip of the rear end from David Elliott, trying to stay out of that the turn 4 wall.
Big wiggle out of the 42, but he resets the fastest lap of the race with a 33.72.
That's the fastest we have seen by far, and he is not going to have any tire left to be able to, 1, battle for this race win, or 2, be able to hold off any of the championship competitors. Now, Morris did not come into tonight having the best run at Iowa last week, finished stone dead last, multiple laps down. Meanwhile, Weeks comes out with a win. Greathouse comes out with a 3rd place finish. He's looking to do that exact same thing here tonight, but he has Dennis Weeks closing in rapidly as we get down to 21 to go.
Safe to say that Dennis Weeks is not holding anything back. Last time across the stripe, 33.89.
2nd fastest lap of the night out of anyone just set out of that number 97. No one's going to have tires left.
apparently not, as Alex Brown continues his climb back through the field. He's gotten by Morris and now starting to reel in Jeremy Knapp, cutting big time into that lead.
Alexander Brown set his personal best last time through at a 34.08, pardon me. He's gotten past Ed Morris Sr. He's gotten past Justin Lemke. He's back up into 6th, where he was prior to the caution coming out. Dennis Weeks has gotten back up into 3rd by passing Matthew Greathouse. And now he has 1.3 seconds to cover over the next 20 laps. He did it in the first stint. However, he didn't have to pass this many cars to do it.
Absolutely. But Elliott right now hanging with his primetime teammate, as we are going to be 19 to go across as they cross the stripe to start lap 102. Morris, Elliott, Weeks, Greathouse, Knapp, your top 5.
Kyle Knapp not going to be there for much longer as Alexander Brown coming up to the back bumper of his number 20 machine. Brown, another big wiggle coming out of turn 2, and a big wiggle getting onto the back straightaway, able to keep that number 67 under control, but a wild ride shows how much he's pushing to try to get as many points out of this.
Well, the other thing, too, is Ed Morris has been kind of sketchy the last couple of laps, and he's let Elliott get right to his back bumper. So Elliott not letting his teammate get away, really putting the pressure on Morris right now.
Justin Lemke into pit road. Wouldn't be surprised if he is done for the night in that number 35. As again, this battle for the race lead here between Ed Morris and David Elliott. Again, both these guys' teammates, a big slide out of the 42, kicks up some smoke off the back end of that number 42.
And you are correct, Lemke just put it on the hauler as Elliott went for a wild one coming off of 4.
Absolutely did, and that's going to drop him to almost a second shy of catching up to Ed Morris. Dennis Weeks now within a second of catching up to the 42, trying for his bid to get back up into second spot. As Morris now sees his opening, he's going to try to run away.
Well, I mean, Morris has always had that short run speed. The question is, does Weeks have enough time to get by both Elliott and reel in Morris, as Morris is a second and a 3/4 to the good over Weeks right now.
Ed Morris, David Elliott, Dennis Weeks, there's the top 3. Separated by about 0.8 of a second between each one of them. Weeks just looks so composed. Elliott looks so out of control, and Morris kind of in the middle.
It's kind of like Elliott is handling his inner Gilles Villeneuve with how hard he's driving right now, and just that car is right on the ragged edge, whereas Weeks right now looks more like Fernando Alonso with how smooth he's taking these corners.
Morris
just as I say that, oh goodness.
Morris had a big wiggle down in 1 and 2, brought Elliott right up to him.
Weeks just went for a wild one coming off of 4.
And that's dropped him to about a 1.5 seconds beyond first and second, as here is David Elliott back once again with 14 laps to go to challenge the 7 of Ed Morris.
Would that be something if David Elliott comes home with a victory here tonight at Homestead-Miami? And, I mean, that was really...
Just about caught that wall. We were riding on board with him. Saw how much he had to catch that thing, and these things are not easy to save.
No, they're not, but these guys have done a lot of saving here tonight. I dare say everybody has been sideways at least once. And it looks like time is running out for Dennis Weeks as Morris continues to show the way, but Elliott giving him all the pressure that he could possibly handle right now, as we are 12 to go. And the question is, does Elliott have anything left in those tires to really mount a good, solid charge on his teammate? Right now, the answer is no, as Morris pulls a little bit of a gap down the backstretch.
Yeah, but Weeks right now having a problem reeling in these top two drivers. Hasn't really pulled in anything at all. All of these guys in the 34.6s these last couple of laps. This boy Elliott really coming off these corners a lot higher and a lot wider than anybody else on the racetrack. Top three in points coming out of this race will be Ed Morris, Dennis Weeks, Matthew Greathouse, Alexander Brown. The last of the championship four going into the Homestead-Miami Speedway, the Phoenix Raceway race. After the Homestead-Miami Speedway race, that was what I was looking. That was. Help me, Tony.
A faux pas.
Help me.
It was a faux pas.
Yes, it was. As Morris and Elliott still running away, and actually running away from that 97 of Weeks. Wonder how much that left front damage, as minute as it seemed, is affecting this car.
Well, you got to think it's affecting him in some way, shape, or form, as he's definitely not showing the same late run speed that he did in the first two pit stops. Had this race stayed green, we might be having a completely different story right now. But Morris right now in command of this race, clinching that bonus point for most laps led, getting the bonus point for leading a lap. Weeks getting the pole bonus point, so and a bonus point for leading a lap. So not quite going all of Ed Morris's way, but Phoenix is going to be a shootout. Straight up, it's going to be a slugfest.
Certainly is, as Ed Morris now starting to open up that lead about a half a second between the 7 and the 42. Dennis Weeks starting to fall now into the clutches of Matthew Greathouse in the number 51. Greathouse has been quicker than that 97 these last couple of laps, but not by nearly enough to be able to put up a fight for that third position. Alexander Brown has fallen well off of the 20 of Jeremy Knapp. We saw those two battling very closely for position at the beginning of this run. That has changed about a second and a half between these two right now, so it'll appear as though it'll be Morris, Weeks, Greathouse, and Brown, the order at which these guys will finish in as far as the championship is concerned. And Morris, a more than deserving winner, and it'll be a season-high 5th win for that number 7.
Yeah, he's kind of been making the statement all season long that if you want to win the championship, you got to go through him, as he's had great runs just about every week so far, whenever he hasn't had those self-inflicted wounds of speeding on pit road.
We talked about him and his race on Monday night at Iowa last week. His Tuesday night race went a lot better, coming home in a podium position. I believe it was second, if I remember correctly.
I believe you're correct, sir.
So a solid run for him in the trucks. And the last time he won an ARCA race, he won the truck race the very next night. Be a completely different track, though.
Yeah, there's usually nothing you could transfer over from Homestead-Miami going into tomorrow night's race for the Ricmatech Truck Series at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the big 2.5 miler there. Virtually nothing is going to transfer over as far as the way you attack the track.
And it'll be the Indy Oval, and if you haven't seen a truck race at the Indy Oval, we've broadcasted, I think, about 3 or 4 of them with the Western States Racing League, and each of them have come down to fuel mileage, and each of them have been absolutely thrilling from start to finish. So definitely do not miss the Ricmatech Truck Series race tomorrow night. from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as we've got 4 laps to go here tonight. David Elliott now about to fall within outside of a second off of Ed Morris, and everybody else separated by more than a second and a half as we now come to the line to take 3 laps to go.
Well, I mean, no matter what happens moving forward here, hats off to David Elliott for the night he has had. He's been in the top 5 since the drop of the green. He set the fastest lap of the event, not just the race. He beat the qualifying pole speed. He beat the hot lap speed. Just an amazing drive out of that primetime Chevy Impala.
Absolutely is. David Elliott, his lowest running position here tonight has been 3rd, not inside the pit cycle. So that 42 has been incredibly strong here tonight. It's coming down now 2 laps, well, a lap and a half to go here from the Homestead-Miami Speedway, and this has been quite a difference for the pilot of the number 7, Ed Morris. Had an abysmal race at a track he loves last week, and now this week will come into Homestead-Miami Speedway. Certainly had his hands full with Dennis Weeks, but after the contact with 30 to go, comes out shining here in the final 25 laps here tonight as he comes through turns number 3 and 4, about to capture what will be his 5th win of the season and will take a huge bout of momentum going into the championship race at the Phoenix Raceway. Ed Morris wins here at Homestead-Miami Speedway.
David Elliott coming home in 2nd. Weeks hanging on for 3rd. Greathouse, after that first lap issue that he had, able to rebound for 4th. Jeremy Knapp coming home in 5th. Alex Brown, after doing the same thing on the final restart, rebounds for 6th. Ed Morris Sr. Finishes on the lead lap in 7th. So good run out of Senior tonight, as Junior just in command of this one. No question, hands down, a dominating performance out of the primetime number 7.
And he was, without a doubt, the man tonight out of Bloomingdale, Georgia. Will go into the Phoenix Raceway with the biggest advantage you could possibly have, and that would be the points lead. With the final races to go, was not easy, was not smooth sailing. He certainly had everything he could possibly handle with that 97 in tow. And Tony, I'm sure you're going to get out of him what you need to get out of him. And Tony, I believe you are with our race winner right now.
Ed Morris, one of the most dominating performances we have seen in quite a while. Led the most laps here tonight. You did have your hands full for a little while with Dennis Weeks. Talk us through what was going through your mind, though, on that second green flag pit stop.
Yeah, on that second flag, on that second stop, man, we were just kind of counting off the laps when the pit, we could have came at any time, and I was trying to let it run out as long as we could, and I wanted to pit before Dennis. I wanted to get in before he did, but he came a lap earlier than I did, and I had to come the next lap. But luckily, we got on and off pit road really well, and was able to stay there with him. But yeah, that was the key, was the track position to get in front of the leader there when he had that better long run speed than I did after the first run. So.
And then after a handful of laps, you were able to get by him, and then you had a complete Code Brown moment.
Yeah, I don't know really what happened there. I got the run on him off of 4 and drove it into 1, and I tried to do everything I could to keep the car from sliding up and keep it on the bottom. And I guess with just checking up a little bit more, keeping it on the bottom, and Dennis, he ran into the back of me, and it just sent us both sideways. Luckily, we didn't kill the wall. We kept our together. Didn't hit anything. I don't think Dennis hit anything either, but that's just unfortunate. It was going to be a really race between the two of us there. It would have been fun to see what was going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. But you come out of tonight with the points lead going into the season finale next week at Phoenix. What are your thoughts going into that D-shaped demon in the desert?
Well, the new version, I don't have a whole lot of experience on the new version. I've ran the old version a few times, so it's going to be a lot of practice, but definitely coming into next week with a win and with the points lead, and we should have gapped Dennis a few points, and then definitely have a gap on the other two. It definitely makes it a bit easier. We're still going to go out and try to win that thing and do the best that we can, but got a small cushion to work with, and it makes me feel better.
Absolutely, Ed. And who do you need to thank before we let you go celebrate tonight's victory?
Maestro, I appreciate all those guys over there for all the support that they give to Extreme Motorsports ARCA Series. RB Custom Rigs, thank those guys for the support. All you guys for doing a phenomenal broadcast, the admins for all the hard work they do keeping this show running. And then last but not least, the team, Primetime Motorsports. Appreciate all those guys' help and support.
All right, Ed. Congratulations on winning here at Homestead-Miami. Best of luck to you next week in Phoenix.
Thanks, man.
So that was
Frank,
your race.
I believe you've got the second place, the other Primetime Motorsports driver with you now.
I do. That would be David Elliott. And David, a solid run for you here tonight. Very quick on the short runs, able to fell off a little bit at the later stages. That caution came out. It looked like it came out just outside the window for you to really mount the charge.
Yeah, I was only good for about 10 to maybe 15 laps at the best. Just didn't have any long run speed. Car was very, very loose. You couldn't slip the tires, so you had to keep your momentum up through the corner, and just kept sliding the tires too much there at the end.
Now, did the fact that your teammate was racing for the championship play into how hard you raced him at the end, or were you just, I'm not in the championship, I'm going for the win?
Oh, no, I was racing him hard as I could there. I was going to try to beat him, but luckily he was good enough there on the longer runs. And like I said, I didn't have enough there to I kept slipping the tires. You got to keep the momentum up in the corner, and I kept spinning the right rear up too much, losing too much momentum off the corner, especially after about 15 laps.
Well, another momentum track you're going to need is tomorrow night for the Rick Motec Truck Series. But going into Phoenix next week, what are your thoughts going into the D-shaped oval and how that new reconfig is going to help or hurt you?
Yeah, I don't know. The new reconfig has not worked out for me. I've ran a couple of races there already and not fared out too well. So probably going to have to hit some practice laps here and see if I can find some more speed. But appreciate all you guys at ESBN and everything you guys do. Appreciate it.
All right. Anybody else you want to thank before we let you go, bud?
Absolutely, man. Thanks to Primetime Motorsports, everybody here at ExtremeMotorsports99.com, and everybody at Maestro's Beer Products. Appreciate everybody helping us out this season.
All right. Your second place finisher, David Elliott. Congratulations, bud.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right. And with that, we will now move to our third place finisher, the man who will go into the championship race second in points. That would be the 97 of Dennis Weeks.
Dennis Weeks, all things considered, can't be too disappointed in a podium finish here tonight at Homestead-Miami. Talk us through what you saw that brought out the only caution tonight.
Ed made a pretty hard move. I was letting him go because I was way better on the long run, and I think he tried to keep it wrapped, and he just checked up a little bit, and I tried so hard to stay off of him. I ended up hitting the inside wall myself, trying not to wreck him even more than I did, and it's unfortunate, man. I feel like I threw away a win here, and it's very bittersweet. But I don't know. 1 mile tracks seem to be my sweet spot, so maybe Phoenix will come back to me.
Well, you mentioned that the miler in the desert next week. What are your thoughts going into Phoenix with the latest configuration that you guys haven't really had any laps in anger on yet?
I don't know if the track surface changed from the 2018 scan, so I think it's just like the where the restart is. But I used to get around there pretty good, so I'm hoping I have something for these guys. Obviously, Ed's going to be strong, and hopefully I can keep him behind me for the long term, like I did at Iowa, and somehow win this championship. But that sucked, man. I really feel like I let one get away.
Well, we can hear the dejection in your voice, but you've just got to regroup and be ready for next week. But before we let you go, have the download with your team about tonight's podium finish. Who do you need to thank?
As always, you guys for broadcasting it. At least I gave you guys some excitement as I flew into the inside wall. Thanks to Extreme and Maestros for sponsoring it. My team Outlaw Racing, we've run a lot here. This track has been very evil to me, and she roared her ugly face again. Autism Speaks and Pro Air, who's on the car, sponsoring me. I appreciate them guys a lot.
All right, Dennis. Again, congratulations on a podium coming out of here tonight. Second place in points. Going to have to work some magic in the desert next week. Best of luck to you.
Thanks, guys.
So that will be our third place finisher, and that will conclude the interviews here for tonight. And Tony, another great race, and again, the first time in a month, a caution.
Yeah, and I mean, you could hear the dejection in Dennis's voice. He was doing everything he could to try to not get into Morris, and you know, it's just too much rear brake brake bias dialed in from what it looked like. Just got into Morris, got him spun, and then actually spun himself, and pretty much cost him the race right then and there with that just ever so slight little bit of damage that he got. As you know, we saw the same thing happen to the 51 of Great House and Alex Brown, both having just, you know, the aero package on these cars is so fine-tuned that even the least little bit of crinkle that you put in either side of, you know, the car, it's going to cost you big time. And I think that's what we saw tonight out of the contact between Weeks and Morris.
Absolutely. And all four of the championship drivers at some point in time here tonight having some issues. Of course, we know the 7 and the 97, the 51 on the very first lap, and then Alexander Brown on the restart. So all of the guys had trouble. Morris was certainly the one that was able to recover from that the best. Weeks would have most likely been with him had it not been for that contact with the inside wall. And then Matthew Greathouse, we know, with him and Alexander Brown on that last restart. Fortunately for Brown, though, for Greathouse, pardon me, made that mistake on the very first lap, had 120 laps to try to recover from that mistake, and did for a fourth-place finish.
Very much so. And we do need to give the unsung hero of this league a big shout-out of appreciation. Brendan Book, the eye in the sky up in race control, making the calls and, you know, decided that only caution that we had was because of Weeks. Weeks actually claimed it, apologized for it in sim, and then, you know, had to get that EOL penalty. I know Brandon didn't want to hand that out, but league rules are league rules.
Yeah, and again, it didn't really affect the 97 all that much anyway. Only had to let one car go by come the end of that race. So right now we'll take a look at the results here for tonight's race. Ed Morris comes away as I bring the championship points up. There we go. Here come the results. Ed Morris takes the race victory. David Elliott and Dennis Weeks round out the top three positions. Matthew Greathouse and Jeremy Knapp will make up the top five. Alexander Brown, Ed Morris Sr., the last two drivers running, Justin Lemke and Jason Brewer, both come home with DNFs here tonight out of the penultimate round of the Maestro's Classic ARCA Series. Coming up tomorrow on ESPN, it'll be a triple header. The All-American Racing League will find their way to the home of NASCAR at Charlotte Motor Speedway. that will be for round number 5 of their season. About an hour after that will be the Rick Motec Truck Series race from Indianapolis, and then another hour after that will be the Western States Racing League. Will run round number 8 of their season at the Iowa Speedway, and then coming up on Wednesday, it will be a double header with the Ghost Cup Series. They will be from Charlotte Motor Speedway at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And then, Tony, you said there was another league that I unfortunately cannot remember the name of at this
Way to go.
moment. Yep.
The Way She Goes Cup Series.
Yep, and they will be running the second round of their season after a very entertaining race at Daytona last week. So for my broadcast partner, Tony Trapasso, I am Frank Marchese. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Join us next week, and we will crown a champion for Season 11 here for the Maestro's Classic ARCA Series. We will hope to see you there. Have a fantastic night, everybody.